Testing, testing. We good? Alright. Sorry about that. Good news is I was working on a video, so I'm sorry I'm so late, but I was working on a video. Alright? I feel like that's a valid reason. Right? You guys can all hear me now, right? I'm sorry. My apologies mean nothing to you guys, right? You guys don't care. Alright, hold on. Okay. Let's see what's going on. Jordan Taylor, thanks for being the Yonko tier member for 6 months. All he has to say is D's. Thanks. Jolly D Joestar says only on time because daylight savings time. All right, nice. Yeah, you guys can give me a pass for daylight savings, right? That's still rolling. Keenan, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months, man. How's your Achilles, Morj? Surely that's the reason you were late. My Achilles is actually not good. It's actually still not good. I don't know when it'll be good. It's definitely... Okay, here's the thing. It's definitely better than it was in January, because in January you had to do like an hour and a half long drive, and I remember that I was dreading it because never mind, it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter. Basically, like, sitting in a certain position, it's my left foot that's bad, but like sitting in a certain position for a long time is bad for the Achilles, so I was like, driving for that long, that's gonna be a pain. But nowadays I don't worry about driving, so that says something, right? Diaclia, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 3 months. Nuts. Wait, what the fuck was this? Was this coordinated? You guys coordinating these things now? Good job. Stormfox says Vegapunk was betrayed by his own selfish desires. Yeah, okay, let's talk about... Oh, wait. Gohana Burr, a genius contribution to the conversation, says get an Achilles transplant. Those don't really exist. Okay, let's talk about the main thing, right? Let's talk about the, the thing we want to talk about, right? York, right? York, not the peppermint patties, the real York. All right. 1 second. Hold on. Let me catch up. This is okay, how do we feel about the reveal? I like it. It's a little complicated. Nerve AMV Maker says, glad Sanji got a W. Yep, like it. But Oda making Luffy and Zoro morons is annoying. We should know if they're using Advanced Conquerors Haki. If not, then why not give us a reason? Yeah, I don't get it. Because at this point, it's gone on a little too long for it to be excused by, oh, they're warming up or they're not trying to break it out, because they're clearly cycling through options, right? Luffy's tried several things at this point, right? He's on the Gear 2nd Hawk Gatling. It's just so random. It's like, why would Hawk Gatling work? And Luffy's stupidity is funny in many moments, but not when it's basically just, it feels forced to slow down the plot or something, which is what it feels like right now. But I would much rather the case be that they are just being stupid and not using Advanced Conquerors Haki for some reason, than the reason be that they are using Conquerors Haki, and one, we have no visual indicator, so from now on we'll just never be able to tell whether they're using or not, and two, it can't hurt Lunarians. If that's actually the case, then that's insane, and it would make Zoro's entire fight idiotic against King, which I don't think is the case. I think the King fight, I like to believe it was a good fight. I have it as one of my top 2 Zoro fights in the series, basically. So let's really hope that gets cleared up soon, but I'm not stressing about it just yet, right? Like, let's get a couple more chapters under our belt before we can tell for sure what Oda's going for here. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 200. Fatingo said, thanks for being Yonko tier member for 6 months. The Grand Fleet's future feat was described as a historic incident. Could this be related to Egghead? Also, could Saturn, Kizaru, or another figure die? So, there's 2 ways to look at it, right? Let me pull up the actual TCB quote again, because when I read it, I didn't think Grand Fleet, but I saw other people saying that. To me, it didn't sound as though... Hold on. Let me address the quote itself, right? Only 1 day remains before the infamous Egghead incident. Okay, so I get it, because the Grand Fleet, that was the last time a future incident was hinted at, And the other thing that we should note is that news has gotten out, I believe, because, yeah, Morgans, that's a big deal, right? Morgans has released the fact that Morgans, or at least last we saw, is writing the story about Straw Hat and Vegapunk, and I can assume that the information about the Marines is going to be public information soon as well, right? So these factors lead me to believe that it is entirely possible, considering the numbers of the Marines, that the Straw Hat Grand Fleet comes in to intervene, right? So a lot of it makes sense there. I personally don't know if that's what the incident is, but I see what makes sense. I don't think Saturn's dying. I don't think Kizaru's dying. I don't think another figure's dying. I have my own video planned for Tuesday as to regarding the incident, but, we'll wait and see. Jarrett McCoy says, any real Morj head does not expect punctuality. Are you guys Morj heads? Is that what we're calling? Do I have to call you guys Morj heads now? I don't like that name. I don't know about that. All right. The Morj cultist started to grow on me. Started to like that one. But it's not catchy, though, is it? Felix C says, Morj, with how quickly we have gone from Egghead being our likely breather arc, do you think this gives more weight to Elbaf being light / Davy back? Yeah, I mean, I've always felt like Elbaf being light makes more sense. I think Elbaf will have a higher... There's two ways you can look at it, right? Because Elbaf will likely have a higher level of combat, if that makes sense, but level of combat doesn't always equate to stakes and tension. So what I mean by that is basically, and people think, Davy backfight, it's not going to be like, I don't know. Okay, yeah, let's backtrack, right? So Shanks is waiting for us in Elbaf, right? Shanks is stronger than Kizaru, as Film Red's canon tells us. Shanks is stronger than Kizaru. We know that Luffy versus Shanks that's going to be an even bigger deal and even higher level than Luffy versus Kizaru or Luffy versus whoever, right? So Luffy versus Shanks, we know that the actual level of what we're going to be facing in Elbaf is going to be stronger than what we're facing here, right? This is just an admiral, probably some vice admirals. Seraphim thrown in, but the Seraphim are being weirdos and running around. And I feel like they're going to be dealt with possibly before the Marines show up. But that's not the same as stakes, right? It's just hard. I don't see how you can have stakes in the Elbaf arc. You can't have true tension in the Elbaf arc because everybody there knows it's friendly, right? At the end of the day, it's friendly characters interacting with each other. Kid and... Especially if Kid's still involved there, it's hard to write an arc where Luffy and Kid were basically buddy-buddy on the same side the previous arc, and now they're, they'll play up the rivalry and like, I really want to beat you and stuff like that, but it's not going to be the same as... It's not a life or death duel, right? And I think lots of times people misunderstand what people mean by tension, which is like, well, we always know that Luffy's going to win at the end of the arc, so no arc has tension. That's not what tension is. Tension is established by how the characters' attitudes are established throughout the arc, what the characters are feeling, how the characters are acting towards the situation, right? We knew during Enies Lobby that probably no Straw Hat's going to die, but it was the way the characters talked and act and felt throughout the situation and how that was communicated to the readers, the type of emotions that were on display, what they were saying, how they were reacting to the situation, the general tone that's set. That's what tension is. Even if in the back of your mind you know that, well, the good guys will win at the end, therefore there's no tension. That's not how tension works, right? That's like saying, by that logic, that means that, Orange Town had the same tension as Enies Lobby, because in both situations we know Luffy's not going to die, but that's just not how tension works. That's not what tension is, right? So Elbaf just... It can't be that heavy or serious or dark of an arc because just by its very nature, there are no bad guys around in that arc as far as we know. If you throw a Blackbeard in, then maybe you got a conversation going, but it's not the same. Egghead Island is different because we've got Kizaru coming and we know what Kizaru did to the Straw Hat crew last time he ran into them, so it's an interesting situation there. Felix C says, Morj, with how quickly we... Oh, wait, no. I was just responding to you, sorry. Just on, see and react mode right now. Ali Clown says, thoughts on Mad Men. I really, 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 really enjoyed Mad Men. Mad Men's a type of TV show that we're not going to get nowadays because I think we're not going to get nowadays because, there's a very interesting thing about Mad Men. I'm trying to keep it short because people complain, but Mad Men's a show I'd definitely recommend. Here's the thing about Mad Men, right? Mad Men, I only watched straight the first few seasons, and then after that I would watch bits and pieces in different episodes. I'd watch an episode here or there, so my understanding of Mad Men past, I think, season 3, it's a bit out of order, but I remember the general storylines and characters and everything like that. So I think the writer of Mad Men, right, he was very successful during a time that Breaking Bad Game of Thrones, and The Walking Dead was also successful. I think this is interesting for anybody that enjoys television because it's a commentary I think I remember that pertained to how television has sort of changed. I don't know if it was the writer of Mad Men who said this, or I think it might have been a critic that was talking about TV nowadays. And this is not to say that Mad Men is better than these other shows and stuff, but things have changed in that TV shows nowadays, they write more long storylines with the expectation that what you're following is basically a season-to-season progression, whereas Mad Men, while it did have overarching storylines, it focused more on it was more so the old school TV mentality, which was you don't know if you're getting picked up for another season necessarily. So when a writer pens a full season of TV, they're focusing on the through line of that season. And therefore, each individual season has a clear sort of thematic structure that it's building that storyline around, and all of the character storylines and everything like that around, right? So Mad Men had that. And the critic or whoever I was reading about it basically gave several examples of, like, you can look at this Mad Men season and it starts with this first episode communicating what the ideas of the rest of the season are going to be, and you can see those develop for the rest of the season, right? Then next season is a fresh start. Other TV shows, right, and this is not a bad thing. I loved Breaking Bad's my favorite show of all time. Game of Thrones I loved while it was still good and stuff like that, but it was an interesting point that a lot of these other TV shows, they're writing with just the expectation of long-running continuous storylines, so there's not going to be a consistent through line across a single season. A single season might have a singular plot line, but thematically and what it's doing with its characters, that might be something that it's, thinking in less of a segmented manner, like, I need to get this character, I need all of my ideas and character development and thematic messaging and stuff to connect in one singular through line across the season, because it's like, well, this is, Game of Thrones season 6, and then we're setting up for these fights and action for the next season, and then this next season and stuff like that. So it's more, there's less of a singular through line, basically, and I'm repeating that a little bit, but that's kind of what TV is changing towards, and that's an interesting thing to think about, right? Which is that, maybe in the past, TV shows were written more with each season being thought of as an arc with its own individual themes, character building and stuff that's all tied together in a certain way, whereas now it's more like just a long, giant story which has to be broken up into particular seasons, which all have to conclude with a certain, like, climactic plot beat, but not necessarily subtext and writing-wise. They all have to be coherent in a certain way. So that's interesting. And you can observe that with Mad Men. Anyway, tangent on that over. DW Crow 13 says, first time catching the stream. You said before that Ace was meant to be Joy Boy, but after a twist of fate, Luffy was then a replacement. Does the Nika fruit change your opinion on that? No. So I never meant as though, because I've never been one to say that destiny is a definite thing in One Piece, and there are lines in One Piece that literally go to the idea that there are different crossroads of destiny and things that can go a certain way. I talk about that in the Marine Ford videos. Those are actual bits of dialogue in One Piece. So it's not as though everything's set in stone, but there are crossroads of fate that can happen, and fate's an interesting thing. So there is fate in One Piece, and it plays a role, but it seems like a malleable role, right? So when I say that Ace was meant to be Joy Boy, and after a twist of fate, Luffy was then a replacement, I don't mean literally as though, there's a script or something like that in the outside the One Piece universe that is God saying, it's supposed to be Ace. You know what? Scratch that. It's now Luffy because things went the wrong way. It's more so that Ace kind of represents the traditional framing of a chosen one type hero, right? Son of the previous legend, right? Given basically the fruit that marks, the fire fruit. Luffy turned out to have the sun fruit, but Ace was the more overt son representation earlier in the story, right? Ace is the older brother, Luffy's the younger brother. Ace is the one that's always able to be very competent, very capable even as a child, conquers Haki user right from the start. Luffy's portrayed to be somewhat inept and weak compared to him. Ace is the one who's taken in by the predominant great force in the world, Whitebeard. Luffy's taken in by the secret great good force in the world, which is Shanks, right? So in a lot of ways, Ace is framed narratively, right? If we were to switch perspectives a little bit, and I read the Ace manga recently, so it hits even closer to home now, just reading the story as though Ace were the protagonist. Yeah, Ace really feels more like a traditional save the world, chosen one type protagonist. We're just following Luffy for so long, this goofy rubber guy, that we kind of take that as fact. But when you put him side by side with Ace, it's kind of like, well, this other guy seems more traditionally in that role. But he had to die for this other guy, Luffy, to really take up the mantle and for the rest of the pirate world, right? So that was even the conversation towards the end of Marineford. Marco, like Whitebeard was saying as he saw Luffy go to save Ace before Ace died, Whitebeard was like, he was starting to have a realization. Show me what lies beyond this era. And that's what he's thinking about with Luffy. As Ace is dying, Whitebeard is giving the speech and it's panning to Luffy saying like, Ace's flames, Ace's will, it won't die, it'll live on in somebody else. The Whitebeard pirates, right? Marco is telling Akainu, we're going to save Luffy because the same thing that you fear of him, we've all come to realize that he has that potential. So Marineford was this changing point where everybody started to view Luffy in this light, and Luffy started being framed more so in that traditional role of, you know, this is the guy that will save the world. And that's why you see in the New World, that's the new narrative, which is so many characters from all walks of the One Piece universe, they're recognizing Luffy as basically that guy that can change the world. And that wasn't as much the case before, at least not from notable figures, you know? Anyway, Audicio, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months. Mork, did you read the JoJo Lands chapter today? Also, congrats on the baby. No, I didn't read the JoJo Lands chapter, but I did see one panel that got floated around. I don't even know JoJo Lands chapter was coming out today. Man, I couldn't even avoid the spoiler if I tried. But I saw one panel in particular that spoiled one thing but I don't mind because I think it's such a cool thing, so I'm looking forward to reading the chapter. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 200. You got 1,000 people in here. Most of you guys should be hitting like on the stream. Pole Mouse says, looking good, Morj. Thank you. Also, really loved York's personality at the end there. She gave me some Harley Quinn vibes. She's absolutely crazy. Yeah, I got a lot to talk about York. I think it's cool. At the most base level, just addressing what you're saying right there, I think it's cool that I think York can do... I guess Harley Quinn's a good pick for it, right, as a comparison. But particularly because York is such a unassuming gag of a character, right? A joke of a character up till now, right? Those are often the ones that when suddenly they become, you know, much more sinister and are revealed to be a lot more creepy and evil. And I think lots of times when you have a character that seems really simple, but there's a very complex and Machiavellian persona underneath that, it has greater effect and kind of comes across as much more, you know, memorable or impactful, I think. So I like that idea. It makes for an interesting persona for her for sure. Jolly G. Joestar says, spoiler says York betrayed to start a war between world government and dragon. What? I'm reading the final pages again just to make sure that's there's nothing like that. Ju says, hehe, it's Maojing. He is so hot. Ooh. Thanks, Ju. Thanks. One sec. Okay. Remix King. Not asking anything about Pokemon Adventures. Interesting. Is this actually Remix King or is this somebody else? Somebody check on him. I don't know if he's okay. Morj, have you noticed the similarities between Dofi and York in stance, method of achieving their goal, and their motive to become a celestial dragon? In stance, yes, because Doflamingo also likes to do that interesting squat type thing, but I think that also could just be attributed to the fact that York is very, very, very tall. By far the tallest Vegapunk. That's another small thing, which is that York is really big, which just in its own way makes it a little creepier. That, you know, the Stella body's just this little dude. So, and he's just a scientist. He has no fighting capabilities. It makes it pretty intimidating for... You know what's funny? If you took that panel and put it into any other series, it would be almost... it would be an even more terrifying panel. Because you've got this helpless little dude, right? And this terrifying, evil, manipulative, backstabbing, Joker style or Harley Quinn style giant with evil smiling faces dwarfing him, sitting down in front of him, just telling him, that, hey, there only needs to be one of us, I'm going to kill you now, right? This would be a terrifying panel, honestly, if you throw it into a horror manga or something like that. Some Junji Ito shit. This is a scary image. But because it's One Piece and we're so used to characters just having giant sizes, I think we don't really think that much about it, you know? Also, it helps we know that, you know, York's not actually going to kill Vegapunky or anything like that. That's not going to happen in the series. But just visually, out of context, this looks like a scary panel. You know? So anyway, the squatting, I think, is just because she's supposed to be really tall. Method of achieving their goal, so a gun, I suppose, and their motive to become a celestial dragon. I don't want to read too much into that yet, but I think that is an interesting observation. What is this? Lemon says, Ray Uchiha, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 5 months. Did York just pull an Aizen? I don't think an Aizen. I think in the loosest sense you could say yes. For those of you who know Bleach, Aizen also faked getting taken out, I suppose, and then revealed himself to be the villain. So I guess in the loosest sense you could say yes, pulled an Aizen. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 300. We got to 200 real quick. Lemon asks, have you played Persona 4? I've been replaying it, and it's one of my favorite murder mysteries. Hope this comes off as topical, lol. I have not played Persona 4, so I'll spare the chat a long tangent talking about Persona 4. Sorry about that, but I've heard really good things about Persona 4. I also have a friend who I know is a big Persona fan, so I think he was playing Persona 5 recently or something. Ender Ayanami, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months. Morky Mork, here's the monthly reminder to read Fire Punch. Also, we need to do a tier list of Morj and Leash thumbnails. That's a fun idea. Maybe I'll do that at some point. I was reading something interesting about Fire Punch recently, which was that it's a very thematically interesting series if you get into the subtext stuff and everything. And you guys know how I feel about Chainsaw Man. I feel like Chainsaw Man, by the way, it's so fucking good right now. It's so fucking good right now. Please go read Chainsaw Man. Go read Chainsaw Man. Get Chainsaw Man Part 2. It has not yet reached the highs of Part 1, but if you compare where it's at progression-wise to where Part 1 was, Chainsaw Man Part 2 is already really, really, really good. It is way better than the early chapters of Part 1, by far. Everything in terms of the nuances of the character writing, the interactions, the pacing, the time he's spending setting everything up, and then we're getting into the really hype stuff even a lot faster than Part 1 and the shock factor and everything like that. I can't tell you how many chapters in a row Chainsaw Man has done some amazing cliffhanger. Anyway, I think Chainsaw Man right now is so fucking good. Beyond that, what was I saying? Yeah, Fire Punch I've heard is also thematically really, really good. It is something that I definitely have to try soon. I also expect it to be a fast read because Chainsaw Man's a fast read and Fujimoto just has a quick pace as a writer for the most part. Chapters kind of fly by. I'm so sad we got to wait 2 weeks for the next Chainsaw Man chapter. Groatstong says York wants to be a celestial dragon to be immortal. I don't know if that's it. I mean, that might be it, but I don't think it's been established that celestial dragons are immortal. Keenan says, I just reread Wano. That Hyogoro quote about feeling like they just couldn't lose still leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Lol. Dude, I got so much to say about it. When people say that Onigashima, people genuinely try to argue that Onigashima has tension. I think that singular quote, there's so many things that you could say that say that it doesn't, just because of the way characters talk and act, etc. But that singular Hyogoro quote is... It basically you can't argue that Onigashima had tension if you're starting the arc by saying that. That's just because that is by definition, it is the definition of an author saying no tension. They're 100% certain that they're going to win, which means that the characters do not feel tension in this situation, which means that I'm not trying to write in tension in this situation. That's what tension is. It's not a debatable idea. That's just if the characters don't feel tension, if the characters are not concerned with the idea of defeat, if the characters genuinely are 100% confident and have no sort of do not view this as a difficult or potentially a moment of if they view it as basically a guaranteed free win, then you don't have tension. If the characters say that, then there's no tension. I don't know what else to say, but wait for the video. The video's coming. Tala Jahan says, if Sanji and Luffy were struggling to tag team with the Seraphim while Zoro casually sends one flying and face tanks a punch, we'd never hear the end of it. Yeah. I think that's... Dude, this is the best chapter. If you're a Sanji fan, Sanji fans, speak up in chat. If you're a Sanji fan, how happy are you right now? This must be the best chapter that you've had probably since Queen broke his sword trying to hit Sanji. This gives those vibes. But I think the vibes are even more... Probably for a Sanji fan, you're probably feeling even better right now just because you get the nice contrast where it's clear that Luffy and Zoro are... Look, I'm not saying Sanji is strong. Sanji's stronger than Luffy and Zoro. I'm not saying that Sanji is going to beat the Seraphim easier than Luffy and Zoro. I'm just saying purely reading this chapter, the feel of it, right? It definitely feels over the course of the last 2 chapters that Sanji is being made to look cool and badass against the Seraphim, whereas Luffy and Zoro are being used to make the Seraphim look cool and badass, right? So the portrayal is definitely making Sanji look better in this moment, right? Not saying it's making him look stronger. I'm just saying the vibe it's giving is making Sanji, it's to make Sanji look cool, right? Whereas it's the opposite so far for Luffy and Zoro. They're being used to make the Seraphim look cool. Basim El Madawi says, this arc is starting to feel like how I assumed Wano to end, with the Strahds fighting an invading marine force. This feels so much better. Good luck with the stream. Let's see how it goes. Remix King says, Morj, have you noticed this? Wait. Oh, I skipped ahead to this comment by accident. Remix King says, BTW, how is the Pokemon Adventures reading going? All right, there we go. I had to take a break for a little bit because they introduced a character, Purple. Not the biggest fan of them. So I'll let you know how it goes shortly. Stas Silantev, thanks for being a member for 6 months. I didn't know I could do this. Looking great, Morj. You didn't know you could do this. Would do what? And thanks, I appreciate it. Do what? The Outback Pandas, thanks for 50 again. Hoping there's a good reason Oda didn't fully petrify Frankie, but I'm basically giving up on expecting anything from him now. Okay, the reason I'll give is that Frankie, Boa kicked Frankie, so it wasn't through a beam attack, right? So she kicked Frankie, so as far as we saw, I think even with the pacifistas, when Boa, the real Boa, was using it in the war, the kicks and the attacks from that, they didn't turn a pacifista to stone completely. It was just a portion of their body that I guess the effect of the kick resonated to. So I think that's fair. Personally. Also, did you see Viz change Jim Brat to Jimbei Jr.? No. I don't know about... What does that even mean? Jim Brat's funny. Because it's a play on his name, right? Jimbei Jr. is just Jimbei Jr. Viz's translations, I hate at this point. I used to defend them. And then people were like, Morch, think about it. Look at these lines. Think about how corny they sound. People kind of had to open my eyes, and after a bit I was like, wait, this is really, really bad. You guys are right. And now I can't unsee it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know what I mean? Okay. Mr. Crescent says, love the Usopp gag, and do you think the other Stellas will play into their sins like how York is playing into greed? So, I think York is the only one that makes it really interesting because greed is that side of Vegapunk that it's the one that you would instinctively think, hey, there might be a problem with that, but the one that because of her behavior and actions, you kind of let it go under the radar, right? You don't think about it for a bit. At the same time, if you had Lilith, who is evil, just start acting really evil, I think that's not as much of a surprise because we were overtly shown from the beginning. Her character is a little meaner than the rest, right? It's just a more straightforward pick, right? Oh, Lilith evil is acting evil. I think Desire is more interesting, especially as it pertains to the themes of the arc, just because it's something that, yeah, I just think it's a more interesting idea when it's something that makes sense once it starts to come to fruition, but especially as it plays into the ideas of the arc, but it's not played up overtly towards the beginning. I don't know if I would say that the same applies to the other Seraphim, if that makes sense, you know? I love the Usopp gag. Yeah, I thought the Usopp gag, Luffy calling Kaku Usopp, was pretty funny. Same. Guys, let's get the stream likes up to 400. Mig Donald says Chainsaw Man is crazy right now. I'd say Chainsaw Man is better than Fire Punch technically, but Fire Punch is my favorite manga of all time because of the themes and setting. Oh, man, I really got to try Fire Punch at this point. Really, if I like Fire Punch a lot, maybe I'll throw it on a Manga Morj. Manga Morj is currently in the process of a Berserk video that's taking a fucking bit. Just because it's hard to make time to write hefty videos on the side, you know? I saw a funny comment. Tusk the channel, this is talking about Sanji stuff, right? Literal feet fetishists, but talking about feet as in F-E-A-T, right? That's a funny pun. Pina says, I don't care about power scaling, but I think Sanji using Germa powers to protect a woman is really, really cool. I would agree as well. Yeah, just a great chapter for Sanji. He like everything across the board. You know, just a few chapters ago, he was just doing his simp. Think about how much changed over the course of this arc. It's so simple. There was a little bit ago that people were giving him shit for, I don't know, not one-shotting the Seraphim Jinbei with his Diablo Jambe kick a while ago, right? You guys remember towards the beginning of the arc where Seraphim Jinbei attacked the Straw Hats? You know, nobody made a big deal out of it, but there were murmurings. It was like, oh, Sanji was there and, you know, he didn't finish off Seraphim Jinbei with a kick. And I think there was some discussion of, oh, Zoro would have one-shotted it, stuff like that. You know, and then later on, Sanji... So that wasn't a bad showing for Sanji, but it didn't exactly hype him up. And then a little bit after that, it was like Sanji doing his I want to be your dog thing, and it was kind of just eye-rolling. But look at this chapter. He's still simping, technically, right? But this is when he's at his best, when he looks like a badass while doing it, right? You know? And yeah, using his Germa powers to protect a woman when the entire point was stuff that Judge was like, this is too soft, you're too soft, your emotions guiding your head, this isn't the way of a warrior, but he can use his Germa powers to do it. I think that's pretty great. Bingle to you, thanks for being a Yonko to your member for 6 months. All things considered, maybe our first clue was that Vegapunk refused the cause of the Revolutionary Army for the funding of the world government seems less altruistic than we assume now. That's true. I mean, look, I'm going to say this, which is... Let me throw this out. Which is... This was a large part... Okay. I think I've learned my lesson. Well, it's hard to do it. When you're a YouTuber, it's just hard to balance things, right? Which is... I put out this video like a while back, which was why Vegapunk may be the antagonist of Egghead Island. And if you go into the video, it's not saying that, oh, the Stella body is just really evil and has all sorts of evil plans and stuff like that. It's just, it's more so, it's literally just that, I mean, you guys can look it up. But the video is mainly just about the idea that, look, there's probably a reason that we've got the body split up like this. Vegapunk's full personality is probably not just this really good dude. And if you're splitting up the bodies like this, then there's a good chance that Oda's trying to do something a bit more sinister, or one of these personalities or some aspects of his personality are less savory than what we're getting out of just the main body, right? The main body is not his true personality. His true personality is more complex. At the end of the day, no, it's not like... My theory is basically once you connect all the bodies, so I'm not going to claim that, oh, I saw this whole thing coming. Obviously not, right? I was saying, what if once you connect all the bodies, then his true personality is more sinister or more gray or morally complex, and they have to deal with that in some way. But this is still going off the ideas that I thought were significant at the time, which is, look, we're splitting him up into six different aspects of who he is. We've already gotten hints from the Revolutionary Army and from some of Jinbei's comments. These were things I talked about in that video. We have hints being dropped multiple times that he's not just a good guy. He is a flawed person and has some flawed desires and goals. He seems overall to be good, but he's not just a good guy, right? And I think that that's basically what's coming to fruition right now, which is, yeah, you can separate out all of his good parts and all of his bad parts, and at the end of the day, his bad parts do hold some degree of sway and can cause trouble. And ultimately, Vegapunk is, in a way, the antagonist of Egghead Island. So this is something that I talked about initially. People were like, this is dumb. It wasn't what I thought, which was once you combine all the bodies, that's the kind of more complex, potentially temporarily antagonistic figure we might have. But I think the train of ideas was still correct. Eric WSZE23. Dude, I don't even know what this name is. You need to get a new name. Can we tell this person to get a new name? His name is Eric WSZE23SSAGENMZZAN. I don't care what language you are from, and call me racist. I don't care what culture this is from. This name is absurd. Why do you have 23 in the middle of it? It makes no sense. S-Hawk running away is not surprising. It is in his genes since Mihawk dodges everyone. Thank you for the donation, by the way. I very much appreciate it. Don't let my comments about your name prevent you from supporting the channel. I'm sorry. I take it all back. It's in his genes since Mihawk dodges everyone. Yeah, I saw the Mihawk roasts and stuff going around. Look, I'm not going to say anything about Mihawk. I'm not going to say anything about Mihawk. It's just... I didn't realize that was in his person. What Mihawk is doing right now is very similar to... if you remember in Alabasta, Mr. 1 went after Nami, the weaker member, right? So that was commented on, which was that rule 1 of assassination. Take out the weaker members first. I didn't think Mihawk's like that, but I'm not gonna say anything, right? I'm not gonna say anything. I don't think it's. I don't think this represents Mihawk. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. When York said you're talking like Stella, do you think this implies if a satellite gets taken out, that person? You're talking like Stella. Do you think that this implies if a satellite gets taken out, that personality gets put back into Stella? I thought she said you're talking like Shaka. She said you sound just like Shaka, right? So let me reread this comment with that in mind. When York said you're talking like Shaka, right? Do you think this implies if a satellite gets taken out, that personality gets put back into Stella? I don't think that's necessarily what that... I mean, that's what would make sense, right? But I don't think that's what she's saying here. But I think that makes sense. Tuna Sub says, have you ever watched any of The Wire or The Sopranos? I think something The Wire mastered amazing. Season-long plots mixed with overarching plots. Yeah, I mean, in general, I think that's what good shows should do. But they do come... The Wire and The Sopranos do come from that earlier mode of television writing. So I haven't seen either of them. I've seen The Sopranos a good deal of episodes, but out of order. So I can't speak on its season to season. Like, if you ask me certain plot lines and stuff like that, then I can take a guess at what season it was. But I don't know the season numbers, and I don't know full plot lines and seasons, right? But I do think that they came from the earlier era of television where it was like you write around one season and, you know, then the next season starts, you can write around that season, you could pick up threads that you were setting up and everything like that. But the idea is that it's more, each season is a singular arc in a sense, right? And it's got its own themes and ideas and what you want to do with the characters by the end of it. Nowadays, I think there is still that, but it is more of just, there is more of an idea that seasons are just a thing where you want to hit a climactic plot beat and finish out some plot threads. But in terms of themes and characters and stuff, that's just stuff that can just be done in a long sense. Like I might be crazy, but I think that Stranger Things thematically doesn't change that much season to season, if that makes sense. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think Game of Thrones doesn't have different thematic focuses as much season to season. I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think that those are good shows. I'm just saying that this is how things have changed, right? And it's an interesting observation in how, you know, the streaming era, the binge watching era, and everything like that. That's a new direction for TV writing. To clarify, I think that TV in general, I prefer. I don't know. It's complicated, but The Wire, Sopranos, I can speak on more. Definitely great shows. But the style of television writing is different, right? And it's definitely closer to episodic, you know? Thomas White says, the Seraphim should be able to damage themselves. So Sanji being able to take a hit like that means his durability should be comparable to theirs. Why should the Seraphim be able to damage themselves? Does that mean that you think that Seraphim Jinbei can hit harder than Luffy's hitting right now or Zoro's hitting right now? I don't think I agree with that. DW Crow 13, welcome to the Yonko. I appreciate it. Starbright says, yo, Morj, did you ever end up starting the Stormlight Archives? Need you on the wave. Dude, I was planning on reading that last summer. I don't know why I set the summer aside. I think it's still that high school maybe mentality that doesn't go away, where it's just like, this summer. I'm going to get so many things done in the summer. I'll spend the afternoons lounging, reading a nice book or some shit. And then the summer comes around and it's the same fucking thing. You still work and you still, you know, you get your weekends and shit like that, but you're still mostly just, it's the same stuff. You get a bit more daylight, that's for sure. I'm not sitting reading a book during extra daylight, so I do want to get back into reading in general, and Stormlight Archives are high up on that list. Leo Rector says, good evening, Mr. Morj. You know, you guys don't say Mr. Morj. Time out, can we address that? How many people, you guys just say Morj? Sometimes you say Mork, sometimes you say Lord, sometimes you say Lork, sometimes you say Marge, sometimes you say Jorm. Where's the Mr.? Where's the full title? I didn't even know I wanted people to call me Mr. Morj until this guy did. Thank you, Leo Recto. Alright, so he said, good evening, Mr. Morj. Do you think Akainu is Rox's son? And hated him similarly to Ace, and it's why he hates pirates so much, plus killing Ace connection. What? What a crazy theory that would be so cool. It would be a reverse Ace. And then Akainu kills Ace? Oh, that would be so cool. I don't think that that's it, right? I don't think that that's it. I don't think that that's it, just because I feel like there's a lot of implications that Shanks was picked up from God Valley, therefore Shanks might be Rox's son. I think that there's just a bit more there. But if it was Akainu, if Akainu was Rox's son, that would be so cool. Do the ages add up? I don't think the ages add up, do they? No, because Akainu might have been born before God Valley incident. Akainu's like 50, 40 something. Akainu age, let's see. Akainu's 49. He would have been like 9. Maybe Rox had him earlier. I don't know. That would be cool. That's a really, really cool idea. I just don't know if I buy it. Growth Stonk says, hey Morj, love the content. Thank you. Where do you think the other 3 Seraphim are? I think that the others are on Elbaf guarding Punk Records. They're on Elbaf guarding Punk Records. You mean the Poneglyphs? Because Punk Records is on Egghead Island, you know? I think that they might just be locked up in labs and stuff in Egghead Island. I don't think that they're in other locations at the moment. Zoldan says, I'm a huge Sanji fan. Thank you for the 10, but this almost feels too good to be true. This is so sad, dude. The Sanji fans have had it so rough for so long. I don't think there's been a chapter like this in the post-time skip, in the New World, ever. Right? And this isn't even that crazy of a chapter. I'm saying a chapter where Luffy and Zoro, against a similar opponent, so they're all up against Seraphims, Luffy and Zoro are not made to look cool, and Sanji is made to look cool. All against the same opponents, right? And you might say, well, Luffy and Zoro, well, they've got the Mihawk Seraphim that they're up against and stuff. I think we're not at a point yet where we can differentiate the strength of the Seraphim too much just yet, because it seems like they're all fairly reliant. A good deal of their ability seems to come from, I think, primarily their Seraphim bodies. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, it's hard to say how much stronger the Mihawk Seraphim is versus... I think once they're all adults and they have more access to their originals fighting abilities and everything like that, especially if Haki comes into play, then yeah, the Mihawk Seraphim is head and shoulders above the rest. But I feel like we haven't gotten a ton yet to say that, oh, the Mihawk Seraphim is way stronger than the Kuma Seraphim or something like that, right? Because at the end of the day, we see Luffy and Zoro, their struggle is the same against both Seraphim, right? Neither of them can damage them, really, right? I'm going off on a tangent there, but point being, it's just funny that you say that, you know, they're all up against at least similar type of opponents, right? The Seraphim. And for once, Sanji is being made to look cool, and Luffy and Zoro are being made to look like clowns for some reason. So Zoldan expands and says, I keep expecting it to turn around on Sanji. Oh, man. What if this is just a huge April Fool's by Oda? It is around the corner, right? You think Sanji's just gonna beat S-Shark? Lol. It's so sad that this has to be a pinch me I'm dreaming sort of a moment. I mean, can't we just believe, take it at face value, that Oda would give Sanji something like this? I'm personally of the opinion that stuff like this should not be out of the norm, right? You should have more. There should be more moments like this for Sanji in general. He should not always just be overshadowed by Luffy and Zoro. It is okay for there to be times where he gets to look cool and they don't. I think that should just be the norm. I think it should just be the norm, right? And that's not a power scaling thing. People get too caught up in the power scaling aspect of it, right? Which is that this chapter doesn't prove Sanji is stronger than Luffy and Zoro. It's just about making a chapter making a character look cool, right? You can have moments where Sanji looks cool and Zoro and Luffy don't, and that is okay. You can have segments of the story where that happens, right? Like Mr. Prince and stuff like that, right? Stuff like that is cool. It can happen. I do think Sanji's probably going to beat S Shark. I don't know if the Strahds beat the Seraphim in a decisive way where the Seraphim are just out forever, but I think that they get the better of them. You know what I mean? So I think that's something that could happen here. Cigar Verk, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months. Always good to see you. Wasn't it S Bear that teleported S Hawk? He had similar bubble as Kuma had while running from Revos. What do you think will Egghead get off screen now? Yeah, so I do think that I saw people say that, but the thing is that I know the thing you're talking about. There's like a little circle with lines coming out of it that imply that Kuma. It's hard to explain. Like when you look on the page, you know what I'm talking about. Like the circle with lines where it looks like Kuma teleported someone. Zoro says Zoro says that Mihawk ran off, so it implies that Mihawk left of his own accord. And the thing is that I think that in manga, at least in the anime, you see very often like that flashing little circle with like lines that indicate that someone just left without people noticing. I think that happens frequently. I don't think that's just a Kuma effect, but I might be wrong on that. So maybe Kuma teleported him, maybe he left. I don't know. Do I think Egghead will get off screen? I don't think so. I think things are heating up. Keenan, thanks. Again, you might have said this before, but who's your favorite Hunter x Hunter character if you have one? My top 2 are Meruem and Kurapika. Killua, honorable mention. Meruem as well for me. And then Hisoka, which is, I guess, the basic pick, but it's hard not to like Hisoka, you know? I will also say that Serednik is rapidly turning into one of my favorites. Really, really cool character. really great villain. There's characters that I look forward to seeing more of that could potentially move up just because I like the personality, the way they operate so far. That's Jing. I swear there's one more. Yeah, at least Jing, you know. I think Hunter x Hunter has a lot of really cool characters. None that I really, really love, but I think it has a wide array of characters that I really like. Meruem was great. I won't say anything further. Basim El-Madawi, just because, some people might not have read. Basim El-Madawi says, how do you feel about the Seraphim having a weakness to water? Almost like Charmander that forcibly turns off their durability. They look too strong. I hope that the solution is not just water because... Look, come on. Why can't we just use hockey to solve this problem? Be like a straight-up confrontation, right? I feel like it would be, especially in Zoro's case, I think it would be especially disappointing if just how much the story is focused on Zoro being like, there's nothing I can't cut. I need to be able to cut everything. You know, you can go all the way from Mr. 1 and what he's talking about during that to the Pika fight where he's like, throughout the mountains and the seas and the swamps and shit, there's nothing I can't cut. And then he just comes up against Lunarian and he can't cut it. I think that would be wildly disappointing. Zoro just runs up against a certain opponent. He's like, well, better fight a fucking bucket of water. I can't cut this shit. Especially, I think the bigger deal is that the Seraphims, there's several of them, right? And then they're representative of an entire race, right? Lunarians, right? So, just if it was a one-off thing, like there's a particular character with just a really, really broke a bit. If it was like Im or something, and it's like, wow, no one can damage Im. That's insane. Maybe no one can damage Im, and that's just Im's thing, right? That's one thing, but it's just like, these are just Seraphim. There's like 7 of them, right? These are Seraphim. They're built in a lab. They're copied off of an entire race of species. So it's like, damn, good luck being a swordsman back when the fucking Lunarians were around. You couldn't cut shit, right? I don't know. I really hope that Advanced Conquerors Hockey can cut the Lunarians. I just don't know why Oda included that line during the Zoro versus King fight where Zoro's talking about, hey, why are you blocking even though you have your flame on? Are you afraid that I can get cut? Right? That seems to heavily imply that he should be able to do it. So let's see. Professor Clover. Thanks for being sorry, the name is just funny. Thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months. That's Mr. Morj to you, Morj. Thanks, I appreciate it. That's Virgo-san to you. Cook says, Morj Addy. I like that one. Felix C says, Mr. Morj, in a similar vein to Stormlight, have you read or are planning to read The Wheel of Time? No, The Wheel of Time is just, I've heard varied things. I've heard that it's, one of the all-time great fantasy stories and stuff like that, but that it is a little bit dated, and also that obviously that the author changes for the last few books. I don't know if I want, and people say that it was picked up brilliantly, and people really liked the way that it was rounded out, and people were like, that was probably finished out as well as you could with an author change. But it's just a personal thing where I would rather not read a story that where the author shifts partway through due to an untimely demise, for me personally. I tried it with Berserk, and it just felt too weird. Even if Wheel of Time is finished out really well, it just feels weird, right? Terry Martin says, just watch the last VOD, and I feel like you got the wrong impression of Haikyuu as a show that takes itself too seriously. It's not like other players have epithets. It's isolated to this one guy. Okay. All right. It's just, Haikyuu's not high on my list of things I want to watch. It was really people pushing me that I eventually watched it. So, I think I tried to make it very clear throughout that I really believe that Haikyuu is a good series. So many people have said so many great things, and the way people have described things about the series to me sounds like something that's a very interesting concept. As I understand it, a huge appeal of the series is basically each team that they face against, you get to learn a lot about the opposing team's characters, and there's a lot of interesting writing that goes into both the main characters and the antagonists, right? Which I think just makes for a very interesting story. It's just, maybe volleyball is just not the thing that I'm most interested in reading about. But maybe that will change. Okay, maybe that will change. Terry Martin says, whose teammates hated him and wanted to ostracize? Oh, it is isolated this one guy. Okay, you're talking about the tall guy whose teammates hated him and wanted a way to ostracize him. Even if you think this particular plot point is stupid, I won't let this one thing color your view of the type of show Haikyuu is. I mean, I don't think that, okay, you guys gotta understand that for me, sometimes, like, mainly when I'm streaming, right, you got to take a lot of things with a grain of salt, especially when it's clear that I'm going off on tangents about things that I know very little of, okay? Take those with several grains of salt. I'm trying to be entertaining at the end of the day, right? I'm trying to be entertaining. If you might remember, I did a Marvel tier list where I threw a lot of the Marvel shows under the bus just because I hadn't watched them. But I was like, fuck them, they're bad, right? So it's largely for entertainment, right? Don't take everything too seriously. I was giving my honest opinion of Haikyuu, but as you can understand, it's not really a valid or thought out opinion because I've only seen so much of the show. But that being said, I will stand by. I think it was kind of ridiculous. I think the beginning was kind of ridiculous, and a lot of the language. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay. Oh, the dude with the long name is back. Eric WSZE23 SSAGENMZZAN says, I know the Stride Fleet coming would be nice, but how would they know this is happening? I think that Morgan's is publishing things in the news, right? So I think that was an important cutaway with the Morgan's VV thing. We don't know how far that's going. We don't know if that would prompt the Grand Fleet to come, but we also know, here's the big key thing, which is that it's a day from now, right? It's a day from now, right? So it's the Egghead incident that takes place in the morning. I think that's what was stated, which means that there's time for things to happen, right? Only 1 day remains. A better event is Punk Records sending the truth out to the world. I got a video coming out on Tuesday that I think you will find to be of great interest on that, and I'll say nothing more. Terry Martin says, the other thing I'll say is that the best aspect of Haikyuu is handling its character storylines, which you get none of from watching 3 episodes. I didn't care for Hinata, personally, but maybe it's a character that I come to like over time. You can never make a great judgment of a character initially. I just didn't care for Hinata right off the bat. Sean Easton says, hi, Mr. Morj, you missed my earlier chat. Oh, I'm sorry, man. I never mean to miss Sean Easton's chats. I'm sorry about that. I never mean to miss anyone's chats, to be clear. But, hold on, Sean. Okay. Maybe Remix King. I could try avoid reading his chats. Okay, did you read JoJo Lands Chapter 2? Also, if someone broke in while you were streaming, would you take us along as you went to fight the intruder? Are you asking if I would let me address this part of it first. Are you asking if I would carry my laptop while I went to fight off the No. No, I wouldn't. Why would I do that? To throw my laptop at them? That would be a funny image for you guys. You could see. No, because I'd have to carry the webcam too. The webcam is not attached to the laptop. So I'd have to physically carry the laptop and the webcam in the other hand. The intruder would be so confused. Maybe they'd just leave. Like, what's going on? Did you read JoJo Lands Chapter 2? No, I didn't. I'm probably going to read that tonight. I did get spoiled on a certain character's appearance, but that's just the way it goes, just because I saw... I don't even mind, because in this case, it did make me hyped to read the chapter a little bit extra. I mean, I'm obviously hyped to read JoJo Lands as is, but the fact is when the story's at such an early stage and you're starting from ground zero, there's not a lot to get you hooked. I love Chapter 1, obviously, but I was almost going to go in the mode of letting some JoJo Lands chapters build up and catch up, but with the little spoiler I saw of a certain character in this chapter, I'm going to read it right away. Titanium Dragon says, what people don't get about the Seraphim is that the Strats aren't fighting one character, they're fighting 2 warlords plus King. For Hawk and Shark, it's 3 people. Yeah, it's just that at the same time, it has to be acknowledged that they're not at the strength of their originals, right? So it's a little more complicated than that. But, you know. That is it. And I'm not trying to... I'm the last person that... I put out that video a while back talking about how I think that the Seraphim could literally be among the strongest characters in the One Piece universe by the end of the story. And this was very early on. So a lot of people had doubts. But they don't have as many doubts now. Right? The big argument back then was, well, what about hockey? Do they have hockey? They don't have hockey. If they don't have hockey, they can't be the strongest. And to me, it's just like, well, let's wait and see. They're kids. How much hockey do we expect these kids to have, huh? Let them grow up a little bit. Jacob says we all know Morj would low diff the intruder. Ice Cream Note Gomes says he would just live in fear. Super Irani says, what if it was against someone you could mid diff? How are we doing this high, low, mid diff stuff for real life fights? You know what's interesting is that I think anytime you throw... What's interesting about the real world, right, is that anytime you're thrown into a real-life altercation or anything like that, right, you never know what's going to... This might sound really generic, but you really, 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 really never know what's going to happen in that situation, whether someone pulls out a knife, a weapon, whether just someone throws a swing that you're not expecting, someone's a little stronger than you expected or something like that, right? So you could go in being like, I could probably mid-diff this person, low-diff this person, and I don't know. There's so many ways that a real-life fight could go. There's something interesting I read, which was that there was this UFC fighter, right, professional UFC fighter, who at one point his house just got broken into by a dude who was just coked up or something like that. He was is out of his mind on drugs, and the UFC fighter was just it's a UFC fighter, right? He was going all out against this dude, and he just couldn't put him down. And it was a really, really, really difficult situation for him. Like, it was very, 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 very difficult. He just couldn't put the dude down because the guy just kept going, and that there's just a difference. And it really shook him. Like, he was talking about how later on it really shook his confidence for future fights and stuff like that, that just a random guy breaking in was so difficult for him, like a random guy on drugs. And it really just puts in perspective that, you know, a real fight, like outside of a ring, outside of any of that, it's very, very difficult to predict how it can go. It's just too chaotic, too many variables and stuff like that. Oftentimes it might not matter how much you work out, what martial arts you've practiced inside a dojo or a ring or something like that. It's too wild. So I don't know. It's interesting. Smell My Finger 01 says, Master Lorge, can you react to President's Rank One Piece arcs? It's peak comedy. The President's Rank things, I think, is one of the funnier video types that's come around recently. I do find those really funny. It's tricky. Okay, here's the one reason I find... I like them a lot. I think past a certain point, I stopped enjoying them, maybe because I watched a few of them, right? But you can also tell that the final version of the list is usually what the creator of the video actually thinks. So it can get like a little bit annoying where, you know, at the end of the day, it's like you're ultimately just watching a dude make a tier list, and you're having random, and the characters, right, the presidents that he has make certain arguments versus other arguments, kind of tell you who the creator is biased towards, or what arguments they're biased towards, or think that they're stupid and stuff like that by who they're having speak. So at the end of the day, I'm like, wait, I'm just watching some random dude's tier list, and I'm hearing him like make fun of certain arguments, or really play up the logic of other arguments. I don't know. It's its own thing. So if I watch One Piece, ranking One Piece arcs, and the guy's like having, I don't know. Maybe it'll annoy me watching it. I don't know. Modi Eunice, welcome to the Supernova. Thank you. Sean Easton says, damn, you're going to break out the coke for the OG Mr. Morj POV as well. Jokes aside, good content recently. Thank you. Streams could start on time, though. Yes, they could. Yes, they could. They certainly could. Riri says Trump, the rage to field. Yeah, what if what if Trump says that in the video? How am I supposed to feel? I'm like, wait, so is that equate me to Trump? Boo Boo says the president's playing Mario Party is peak though. Yeah, I feel like a Mario Party one is probably, it's just gonna be funny, right? Sammy Semko says, what are your thoughts on the narrator coming into play? Do you think it's a good moment? It's a good storytelling tool in this moment. Is Oda trying to pick up the pace? Okay, so here's something I want to, because I felt like this was very relevant after the last video that I did, right? So the last video I did was about One Piece hype. And I really do stand by a lot of what was said in there, which was, it's something I didn't even realize. You know, you realize certain things consciously, subconsciously. I think I didn't consciously really think about it till I was partway, till I was, I think, a good way through this arc, right? And I think I realized at the moment that, you know, Shaka got shot, and then I'm going and seeing the reactions to the chapter and stuff, and a lot of stuff is people being upset that we're not looking at Shanks and Kid on Elbaf. And look, I was disappointed we didn't get more of that scene either. But at the same time, here's the thing. I feel like a lot of the people had mixed feelings about the last few chapters of Egghead Island whenever it was focused on the mystery part of it, right? I think people, like, you're seeing a lot of buzz now that the mystery was resolved and it turned out to be York, so people are clearly happy with the way that it turned out for the most part, I think. And I haven't talked enough about York just yet. I think I'm going to get to that in a second, right? But the reality is that people were kind of, you know, like, what's this? What's happening? Blah, 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 blah. Let's get to the other stuff. We want to see more of this stuff. Not a hype chapter, stuff like that. And I think part of it is just that, you know, as I said, a lot of chapters have these cliffhangers that we're ending on. You can go through the last several chapters, and so many of them are ending. There's a difference between ending with a cliffhanger like last chapter, which is a cliffhanger for the actual Egghead Island plotline, versus cliffhangers that are like Garp's going after Blackbeard, or Shanks is facing off against Kid, or what's happening with Law and Blackbeard, or something like that, or Vivi and Morgan's. Isn't that crazy, right? So a lot of the cliffhangers are ultimately, they're being thrown in almost to, you can't help but be more excited by that random out of the blue cliffhanger for something totally different versus what's going on in the arc, right? So that's one side of things. But then at the same time, Oda's also going out of his way more to hype things that are going to happen towards the end of the arc, right? Versus focusing on the current murder mystery plotline, right? So, oh, we see Kizaru coming. A couple chapters later, oh, it's Saturn coming. A couple chapters, like this chapter, we didn't really have anything crazy about the outside world, but Oda's literally telling us, hey, this is all going to lead to a really, really big instant. I don't think there's ever been a time that I can recall in a previous, or at least like a pre-time skip arc, or even the early post-time skip arcs, where Oda is, like, where the narrator is coming in and telling us that the finale of this arc is going to be a huge deal, right? I think even, you go back to Saboti, you go back to Marineford, we did have people, like, the narrator hyping up the war, right? But that's because it's the direction that it's going, right? It's not like a twist event or something like that. We already know the war's coming, right? But we never had the narrator being like, there's going to be a big incident at the end of Saboti, and it's like Luffy punching the Celestial Dragon, or there's going to be a huge incident at the end of Water 7, and it's like, oh, Luffy's declaring war against the world government and stuff, right? So that's definitely a new thing. Now, you might be saying, well, is Morj complaining about this? No, I'm not. I think it's just different, right? It's just different in that I think Oda is almost more aware now of what really gets us readers going and hyped and what gets us talking. And he's going to include that in the story, right? So there's almost no need for the author to come in and say, hey, there's going to be a big incident at the end of the arc, right? You would just wait and read and be shocked at the incident, right? Like Luffy punching the Celestial Dragon or whatever that may be, right? But the author's coming and telling us that, hey, be excited for the climax of the arc, right? Also, you guys might be thinking, like, well, Oda said the big incident thing with the Ace and Blackbeard situation. That's a little different because that's outside world building stuff, right? It's not like he's in Enies Lobby saying, be excited for the end of Enies Lobby, right? That's a huge thing happens. He's leaving it open-ended with a cliffhanger, right? This is outside world building stuff. It's in between arcs, and he's telling us that this is going to lead to a bigger arc, right? It's not quite the same thing. And Oda's always done stuff like this to some degree, right? Getting us hyped, teasing us for other stuff. I'm just saying that now we're at a point in the story where he's more aggressive about it, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, it does get us excited. As long as it helps, as long as you're able, like, you, the reader, are individually able to stay in the moment and still be excited for the current plot lines, the current character stuff that's happening, the current mysteries and everything like that, it's not a big deal. Like, it's cool. It's cool reading, hey, this is going to lead to a big incident. Did I need to see that? No. Does it still make me excited? Yes. Do I still feel do I feel impatient to get to that incident? I don't personally. I'm happy to let the rest of this York storyline play out for as long as, like, Oda thinks is right. But I can understand why that leads to controversy, because now I wouldn't be surprised if lots of people are going to be saying, Oda, like, why isn't Oda moving it along? Why can't we get to the fight the next day and the incident the next day and stuff like that, you know? Uchek, thanks for being a Yonka to your member for 6 months. He's saying, what a chapter. Yes. Let me talk about York real quick. Let me talk about York, all right? So, the York review. I liked it quite... How much... So there's 2 videos I'm juggling for Tuesday. I've already written the draft for the one that I think is going to be the Tuesday video. But I do also want to do one that's talking about... I think maybe I'll wait for the next chapter, because the next chapter will probably give us some more details on York, which I think will give us details like thematically what to think and everything like that. But I think that everybody's picked up to some degree on how York being the traitor makes sense thematically, right? It all just kind of clicks thematically with everything Egghead Island has already been about, the ideas that have been phrased repeatedly, right? As for, do I think it was a good review? Like, do I think it was a good... you could put it into 2 categories. In general, in terms of classic, what makes a good whodunit mystery, technically this wasn't done like that, right? But Oda's not a whodunit... Like, he's not Agatha Christie, right? This isn't his forte. Oda's really good at other mystery. I think Oda's phenomenal at writing certain, like, long-term mysteries throughout One Piece. We all know that, right? I think he makes those things connect phenomenally well throughout One Piece, right? We know that, right? Stuff like Kanjuro and York, these are really his first times writing into the story a whodunit style mystery, right? Where he's saying, hey, there's a bad guy, try and guess who the bad guy is. That's different from his usual style of mystery storytelling. I think Oda is a phenomenal mystery writer in general, and One Piece's mysteries in general, I think one of the things that are one of the biggest draws that keep people coming back, because they're so well thought out, so well planned over time, and they're usually, like, 95% of the time, really exciting and mind-blowing, okay? That aside, let's talk about the Kanjuro York type thing, which is the new style of mystery storytelling, which is Oda likes doing this whodunit type thing. That's new, right? People might be saying Water 7 was the first time, but people would be wrong, all right? These two, York and Kanjuro, are not similar to the Water 7 stuff. The Water 7 situation was never framed as a whodunit style storyline, okay? We got the reveals out of the blue that, like, when we had these masked figures and stuff running rampant and attacking people and stuff like that, right? We'd already had the name CP9 and stuff like dropped. We could tell that these masked guys were bad guys and things like that. But Oda was never playing up a sense of, wait, who are these masked guys? There are people in the island that were secretly masked figures this entire time that were working for the world government or something like that, right? He never established a sort of like, figure out who's under the mask. That was never a thing, right? It was the surprise was purely out of the blue that it turns out that these are guys that we already know. There was never anything planted in the story for us to that Oda was suggesting to us that, hey, you should be trying to figure out who these masked characters are. Totally different from the Kanjuro situation and the York situation, where Oda planted a mystery where he's like, hey, there is a traitor. He has characters talk repeatedly about there being a traitor. He has characters repeatedly saying we need to figure out who's betraying us and everything like that. Somebody on our side is selling out information. That's planted, and now the readers are trying to figure out who that person is. York, same thing. There's somebody on the island. Who's doing this stuff on the island? We need to track down whoever this person is, right? That's very, very different. So Water 7, I think people shouldn't even bring that shit up because it's not the same thing. I know I brought it up as a comparative mystery situation, but it was more so just a mysterious plot line rather than comparing it one-to-one as... I'm talking about in the last video I did. Yeah, I did say Water 7 was also a mystery plot line. It was a mysterious plot line, but it was never a whodunit mystery, right? So I'm talking specifically in terms of whodunit mysteries, right? In terms of whodunit mysteries, we've only had 2 in One Piece so far. The only 2 were Kanjuro and York, okay? So, when you're talking about a whodunit mystery, generally speaking, the really, really good whodunit mysteries, the ones that are generally acclaimed, considered very good, are when the person is both someone very surprising, but also someone that makes really a lot of sense when you can track back their statements, actions, their statements, actions, and behavior throughout everything you saw of them, and suddenly everything clicks. You want a click sort of a feeling where it's like, oh, they did this, and they said this, and they were acting in this sort of way. And all of these odd little things suddenly make sense once you get that reveal, right? I would argue that Kanjuro was close to that. Kanjuro was kind of that, because Kanjuro was the situation where we saw so many of his actions that a lot of people said didn't make sense, like his left hand, right hand situation. Why was he sending these birds away? There was lots of little things about Kanjuro that people were already calling out, which was like, why is he doing this? Why is he doing that, right? And then it suddenly clicked. With York, it's not the same, because with York, there's nothing about her actions, statements, behavior. There's no oddities, right? A good mystery is when the author sets it up such that, wait, something's not adding up about this character, but it only makes sense when the reveal happens and suddenly everything clicks into place. That's what the legendary mystery storylines are kind of considered to be. When everything just clicks based on what the character has been shown to be doing, and certain things are just a little bit off, but you only realize why they're off and how off they were once you get that final piece of reveal. York is not the same because Oda essentially had her do nothing throughout the arc. However, right, at the same time, I think York is a more interesting reveal than Kanjuro, right? I would say by the standards of like a normal whodunit and what most would consider to be a good whodunit mystery storytelling template, the York reveal is kind of whatever, right? It's just, you're not really writing anything into the story to set this up to be it suddenly clicks reveal, right? When people are bringing up, well, she's her thing that she represents is desire, and the arc's theme is desire. That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing, right? Like, it means thematically it fits, but you're not actually writing the mystery to set up any sort of click reveal, basically, with how this character is being written over the course of the story, right? There's nothing about the way York was written up till now that makes this a really good reveal. But conceptually, the idea that Vegapunk's satellite that represents desire and has his deepest desires is ultimately the one that was betraying them, that is really good. So ultimately, it's like, as a whodunit mystery, right, which I keep saying, no, it's not as good as Kanjuro, right? But it's way more interesting to me than Kanjuro. Reason being, with Kanjuro, I always felt like You could have swapped Conjuro for plenty of other scabbards, and I wouldn't have really cared because it doesn't really mean anything, and it almost doesn't really impact the plot in any different way. If Raizo was revealed to be, oh, I'm actually Kurozumi Raizo this entire time, I'd have been like, all right, cool. What does that do for me, right? It's just, okay, it's you, right? Like, if Oda just changed things a little bit and been like, okay, Raizo does the slightly more suspicious stuff, it's like the characters among the scabbards, it doesn't really matter to me too much which one it is at the end of the day, right? With York, there's a lot of meaning attached to it being the desire body, right? Because now we can get into some really, really interesting thematic ideas, right? And it says so much more about Vegapunk and the type of person Vegapunk is and the thematic hints that we've been getting so far, right? So in that sense, I think that the York reveal is probably the best one that it could have been, I think, in out of all of the Vegapunk bodies that I can think of. The reason that I think I and many crossed off York, though, that still hasn't been addressed, which is just like, how was she taking out the cameras? Because she was actively walking around with the rest of the Straw Hats at the same time that was happening. And how was she keeping her knowledge from being synced with Punk Records? So those are the two kind of big things. So I'm sure some people saw it coming, but I think it's very difficult to see coming because we saw her. She had an alibi, right? She's walking with the Straw Hats at the same time as the cameras are being taken out. So it kind of doesn't make any sense. In that sense, she was in the right building. She was in Building C, which is what Shaka was talking about when the cameras were being taken out. But there was no clue in that. Like, you would naturally cross her off because it just doesn't add up. But I'm sure that there's a good explanation for that. Maybe she told one of the Seraphim to take out the camera or something, as she's clearly been giving the Seraphim orders behind the scenes. So I think it would still make sense. Mangekyo3000 says, what if Oda's just referencing the narrator's words at the end of Dressrosa when he's talking about a big incident coming up? One-time thing, maybe? Yeah, maybe. Maybe. It would be really cool if this is how the Grand Fleet connects back. And it just makes sense, because it's like, if the Grand Fleet hears about this incident in the news from Morgan's, maybe there's still time for them to mobilize, come in, and, how else will the Straw Hats take on so many battleships? Could be really cool. Down these stairs, welcome to the Yonko. It would also be really cool, like, how Shanks is at Elbaf with his giant fleet surrounding the island? If the Straw Hats then rolled up to Elbaf with their own fleet. That would be awesome. Leo Recto says, good evening again, Mr. Morj. Thanks, Leo. Do you think that the Garp and Blackbeard fight will be when Aokiji turns back to the good side? Plus, what's your Bogart power scale? Okay, I don't have a Bogart. I don't want to talk about Bogart. I don't fucking know what his power scaling level is. But that is a great point. I honestly didn't even think about the Aokiji Garp. Dude, Garp running it. I didn't think about this at all. Great point. Garp running into Aokiji during the Blackbeard pirate situation, because the Aokiji Garp dynamic, it's very mentor-mentee. That would be really, really, really cool. Really, really cool. Maybe not mentor-mentee, but Aokiji clearly looked up to Garp and respected Garp a lot. You can even see in Chapter 0, obviously during the post-Enies Lobby part and everything like that. I don't know. That's really cool. That would be such an interesting confrontation. I'm really looking forward to that dialogue. Kevin Dreher says, do you think the Egghead incident is Dr. Vegapunk faking his death to world by hologram? I don't know if Vegapunk is a big enough deal to the average citizen that it would matter, Oh, Archer's here. Hey, what's going on, man? Very much agree with you. Narratively, her being the traitor is an amazing concept. It's just the mystery side that felt undercooked. Even now, it's hard to explain how she could have done it. I'm sure there'll be an explanation that we all buy. It's just that, I mean, it's probably going to be this... Dude, if I had to guess, I don't know what your guess is, but she probably told the Seraphim to attack one of the cameras. The bigger question is the syncing of Punk Records. I hope that that's explained. Cigarverk says, King Pinzoro would have been a better reveal than York. So people don't like the York reveal? Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's no click moment with Billy Bob says Morj can't power scale. Just because I don't want to power scale Bogart, leave me alone. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Which is just that it just like the York reveal. It pretty much just comes down to, well, she symbolizes greed. Oh my God, Oda had characters say desire before in the arc. It's a brilliant reveal. That's not really. I don't view it as a brilliant reveal in that sense, basically. But I ultimately don't care too much, just because I think it's more interesting for the arc. I think ultimately none of the Seraphim would have been an interesting pick to me. I think York being it is at the very least interesting simply because it opens up ideas for the arc and it connects back to the ideas of the arc in a way that I didn't think about. So I like. And I pushed the Doflamingo Seraphim thing for a bit. For me, with the Doflamingo Seraphim thing, I think I even said this in the video towards the start of the video. Generally, I like when it's a known character that turns out to be, in a whodunit sort of situation. It's a known character that turns out to be the person, right? I had just started the video by crossing off pretty much all the known characters because I went through and was like, well, this character was seen here while the cameras were being taken out. This character was seen here while the cameras were being taken out, blah, 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 blah. So I went through and crossed off, and then that's how I started heading towards, okay, well, then maybe it has to be someone not involved, so therefore Doflamingo Seraphim, right? I always think it's better to me okay, I won't say always. I think that there's lots of situations, if you go back to what I said before, which is like, generally for a really good whodunit style mystery, it feels the most satisfying, and these are the type of whodunits that get the most acclaim and are the most praised when, a murder of Roger Ackroyd or something like that, right? When actions, motivations, behaviors, there's small oddities sprinkled throughout that the reader almost doesn't question, but subconsciously in the back of your head, you can remember all of the small oddities and behaviors and everything like that. It's that thin, fine line, and then everything clicks and falls into place as soon as you get that final piece that explains, hey, it's this person, and this is why, and that's why all of those small things just add up to suddenly make so much sense. It's a eureka moment, right? That's what I said is good. However, there are also times when you have third parties do it, which are characters that are not in the known cast of characters. With those situations, those are much better set up in sort of stories with established universes. So think Harry Potter, right? Peter Pettigrew in Prisoner of Azkaban, or Barty Crouch in Goblet of Fire. Those were not known to be part of the cast of characters we were working with, but still really, really good mystery reveals because in terms of stories with like sort of established universes, you can build a larger sort of conceptual cast of characters based on established information, right? General narrative foundation and exposition of hypothetically who could exist or things that are being referenced and stuff, and missing pieces that don't make sense with any of the characters involved. So in those cases, bringing in a third party can be just as satisfying as having a sort of click moment with an established character in a known cast of characters, right? So it's kind of different rules when you're bringing in, hey, the answer is a third party figure. It's like, okay, well, what are the sort of established things that you've set up story-wise or universe-wise that would make this make sense? And would we have a reason to realize that this missing piece is the only missing piece that could fit, but it's one that we could have expected all along? That's when a really good third-party pick like Peter Pettigrew, Barty Crouch, or in this case, I would argue Seraphim Doflamingo or something like that could be really good. But when you're going out of established characters, right, so it's somebody that we know from the cast, then yes, generally you want to be planting slightly suspicious or memorable bits of action, statements, or behaviors and stuff like that will all fall into place and just all of the puzzle pieces will fit together, right? So we don't get that with York, but ultimately, I don't care. The mystery didn't last that long. I just don't care. I think the Contra one lasted a lot longer, so I wanted more things to fall in place there. And, if you watch Marco the One Piece Theorist videos, he spells it out very brilliantly why Contra was a good pick. So I'm just more interested in the character of York from here on. Does that make sense? Gohano says, Morj, do you read a script for your videos? Is it all, or is it off the top of your head? Oh, I read a script. I actually have a... Hold on, let me show you guys this. Well, actually, I'd have to take it down, basically. But I have a thing where like a iPad thing with a mirror, basically, where I can just have it automatically. It's a teleprompter setup, basically. So there's a script, it'll go on a teleprompter, and I read off of that. So many people are still talking about Bogard. All right. Bobby D. Blizzard says, what is your favorite Bogard moment, and how long do you think it would take for him to kill Shiryu in 1v1? Dude, I don't even remember Bogard moments, dude. What did he do? I don't remember him doing anything. Tala Jahan says, Power Scale Sanji. Us Sanji fans earned it, Mr. Morj. Tala Jahan, I didn't know you were a Sanji fan. Um. Okay. If I had to, no, I literally. Here's the tricky thing, which is with I feel so bad for. You know what's funny is that okay, I swear during most of Wano, a lot of people were like, yeah, king and queen seem like they're about equal, or king obviously stronger, but people were like, yeah, it seems like they're portrayed similarly or something like that, or the king's probably not that much stronger or something like that. And then I think by the end of the Onigashima, I feel like this was the case earlier in Wano, maybe before the, I don't know when it kind of changed, but I swear sometimes you just see like things change over time without a ton of reason, I guess I would say. And I think by the end of Wano, there was a lot of discussion, which was just like king is not just stronger than queen, because everyone always accepted king is obviously going to be stronger than queen, but a lot of discussion that king is not just stronger than queen, but like way, 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 way stronger than queen. I think the dialogue kind of just changed at some point, and I don't know when, but it just became king way stronger, and then queen, like I don't even know. I've seen some people basically say that say kind of almost absurd things about queen's strength, which is just that the gap between king and queen is like I don't know, like the gap basically the same as like king and jack or something like that. Like I swear there are a lot of people who think that queen is closer to jack than to king or something, which I don't think was ever the portrayal. So power scaling Sanji is difficult. It just becomes difficult because it's like Sanji will always fight a weaker opponent than Zoro, and it's hard to get a good gauge of how much the gap is between Sanji and Zoro's opponent. And I feel like because there's more Zoro fans, if you let the community have their voice with it, just have their say through their voice, then ultimately the royal decree is just going to be, you know what, whatever, however strong Sanji's opponent was, it was way weaker than Zoro's opponent. I ask you guys to think about this, and I'm not trying to make any claims about how close Sanji and Queen were. I do think people tend to underrate Queen in some ways, because what people forget about Queen is that, like, people really play up, you know, King was Lunarian, Lunarians were really hyped up and everything like that, right? And that's true. Lunarians were really hyped up. But what people forget is that Queen had all of the abilities of Germa 66. Every one of Sanji's family members' abilities, right? Ichiji, Niji, Reiju, Yonji, I believe he had all of those abilities. And Germa 66, their abilities and their technology was hyped up quite a bit too. Big Mom wanted those abilities. Like, you can talk about Big Mom wanted Lunarian on her team. She wanted Germa 66's technology. Like, the Germa 66 and the things that they could do, that was impressive. If you go back and look at the Whole Cake Island arc, they were kicking ass as they were freeing, as they were getting Luffy out of the mirror world, basically, and opening the path for Sanji. Like, they were just running through Oven and shit, and like all of these, like all of the Big Mom henchmen, basically, pretty effortlessly. The Germa 66 abilities are pretty strong, right? Electricity, laser beams, poison, strength, like light, like all of this shit, right? Queen had basically all, like, Sanji was basically fighting his entire family at once. Granted, Queen didn't have their exoskeletons, but Queen also had an ancient zone and probably way better hockey, and is probably just way better physically, I think, anyway, than like fucking Yonji or some shit, right? So I think people just kind of ignore that. Plus, Queen had fucking rapid fire lasers and stuff like that. We've already seen how broke lasers are in the One Piece world. Queen had a lot going for him, to be honest. I think people tend to underrate that. I don't know why, but people act like Queen's a scrub. Maybe because Queen was just used in a gag manner very, very frequently, but I really don't think the gap between King and Queen is as big as some people make it out to be. And what I'll leave it at is that if you had left it up to One Piece fans, right? Let's say that the CP9 didn't have Dauriki. Let's say they didn't have Dauriki at all, right? If you let One Piece fans just make their assumptions, I think you would see a ton of people arguing that Sanji would never have been able to beat Kaku, and that the gap between Kaku and Jaibura is huge. I bet you would have a lot of people arguing that Kaku was closer to Lucci than he is to Jaibura. Like, really think about it, because, I mean, Kaku did a lot of impressive stuff. He cut the entire tower in half, which was a huge attack that everyone was like, holy shit, what happened? Like, people, your Chopper fucking 4 floors down talking about it, like, whoa, what was that? That was a huge deal, right? So Kaku did a lot of impressive stuff. I would not be surprised if we went back in that arc and if there was no rankings or anything like that. I wouldn't be surprised if, one, a lot of people would have probably argued, like, hey, I bet Jaibura's stronger than, or like, I bet Jaibura's probably not even much stronger than Blueno. I mean, you know, base Luffy struggled with Blueno, and I bet Sanji's not stronger than base Luffy or whatever, so, you know, shit like that. So Um, like really think about that. I think at any given opportunity for open interpretation shit, I think that because the community is more Zoro fans than Sanji fans, I think that it is very likely that Sanji's opponents will be interpreted as weaker than they are actually meant to be. And I think that that's just something I've seen consistently throughout the story. So with this, with the Sanji King Queen debate, right? When it comes to power scaling Sanji, it's just difficult because I'm seeing so many people say King is way stronger than Queen. We bet Sanji wouldn't even be able to beat King and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, I mean, I don't know. I mean, so many people seem to think that Sanji's not first commander level or something like that, or that he can't be first commander level yet. But personally, if I had to give my best guess, it would be that I think that King and Queen are not that far apart in strength. I think that that's something that's cherry picked and maybe overblown by the community somewhat. I think they're not that far apart in strength. And even if they are decently far apart, I think Sanji, once he was going all out, was still significantly stronger than Queen. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sanji's in the vicinity of first commander level. That's where I'll leave it at. And I know that's a long power scaling answer, but it was more so to address like a general narrative, right? And honestly, today is like a good day to talk about Sanji, right? So let's give him some props. You know, maybe next stream I'm shit talking him. Who knows? Cigarverk says, heard you're in jail in Canada as in China as you have more than 2 kids. Shit, I missed some. Hold on. C-Day, thank you very much. Archer says, the second Sanji started fighting Queen is when the fandom suddenly started treating Queen as weaker, just saying. Dude, I mean, that's a thing that I think I actively noticed in the community. Dude, when you're a content creator, you'd remember when things change. Like, you remember when I think that's why, I think especially on Twitter, I'll just say some shit like, dude, people just started saying this shit, or people just started saying this shit because they want to push whatever. Because I hate when I can see, like, you see comments all the time, right? You're putting out videos, you see comments all the time, you're invested in the community, right? So you can see what the general narrative and general takes are. So you're very cognizant of when suddenly tides start to shift. That's what I talked about a lot with the Chopper Smile situation, which is just that, I don't want to get into that all over again or whatever, but you can see when people start reversing claims, and you can even notice specific names and stuff that start reversing claims and stuff like that. Which I just don't like, because it's just like, well, then I feel like we're never having honest discussions and stuff like that, because it's completely fine to change your mind, right? When you get new information. But that's different from, oh, something happened that doesn't fit with what you want. So, like, if you want to always believe that Zoro is 10 times stronger than Sanji, then if something's happening that you don't want, then you will reverse what you previously believed, just to maintain the previous idea that Zoro is greater than Sanji by like 10 times or something like that, right? And people might come in and be like, Morj, what are you in the raid failing? I will maintain this. You can go back through and see all my arguments for the raid failing. I was fairly consistent, I think, from start to finish about like, yeah, I think that we're looking for this type of moment or this type of writing. If characters start acting or talking this type of way, then I will stop believing that the raid's going to fit. I think people push a false narrative about me, about like, well, Morj just twist everything to say the raid's going to fail. I was very consistent from the start, and you can track my videos from the start. I was always like, I think this is going to happen. I think we're probably looking at Awakenings coming. I think we're probably looking at it not making sense if Awakenings don't come. I think we're looking at basically we need at some point characters to feel tension or feel like they're going to lose. I was very consistent from start to finish. I think people just assume that because the raid didn't fail, Morj must have just kept changing his narrative and stuff. It's like, no, you can see my comments and my reviews. You can track everything, basically. I was very consistent with what I was expecting out of the raid failing or not failing. So, I don't know how it got to that, but I just feel like that's a tangent that just came up in my head just now. Narrator says, I'm a Zoro stan, but how can people not realize Zoro has always kept Sanji and Zoro close as a rivalry? To be honest, this chapter is the first time I thought Sanji getting stronger than Zoro is possible. Whoa. Let's not get ahead of ourselves now, because now at this point it's just going to be you open Pandora's box there. I'll have to stop you right there, man. Can't be reading any more of your comments. You can get me in trouble. You're going to get all of us in trouble. This whole operation can get shut down. You go around talking crazy stuff like that. C-Day says, where's Fujitora? We seen Green Bull and Seraphim. What does that have to do with Fujitora? Fujitora's chilling. You know what? I think we might not have seen Fujitora because his opinions on the state of the world is going to be very telling, right? Because he's already very suspicious of the world government. So all of this new stuff, this SSG that he was advocating, his opinion of how all that turned out is going to be very telling, right? All right, guys, let's get the stream to 500 likes. Christian Brazza says, at least Queen used hockey in his fight. Sad how all other Beast Pirates bar ulti didn't. Yeah. K-Nerb says both Zoro and Sanji are beyond Yonko 1 right now. I think that that's possible. I think that we don't have enough to say that, personally. Watch when people downplay the Admiral Sanji fights. Dude, I mean, I think that that's a legitimate thing. Because, I mean, you can already... I think it's not hard to imagine, right? Let's say it's time to fight the Admirals. I think right now, everybody is kind of on board with probably Kizaru. Remove Akainu. Akainu's Fleet Admiral, right? He's number 1. I think most people are on board with the idea that Kizaru is the strongest, or maybe Fujitora. Like, some people... Fujitora, let's set aside, because I think Fujitora won't be even... Let's pretend Fujitora is not even an enemy at the end, right? Because that's very possible, based on what makes sense for his character and his stated motivations and what he views as right and wrong, right? I doubt that Fujitora is fighting on the side of the world government. It just makes no sense based on literally every statement he made in Dressrosa, right? So let's talk about the admirals that make sense as final villains, right? Kizaru and Green Bull. Most people still say Green Bull is Admiral level. Even if, him getting scared off by Shanks doesn't look good, most people are like, yeah, Green Bull is Admiral level. He's not as strong as Kizaru, probably, but he's Admiral level. Let's say, hypothetically, Sanji fights Green Bull, and that's Sanji's fight for the end of the story. Sanji fights Green Bull. I would genuinely not be surprised if Sanji beats Green Bull, and a lot of people are like, they start saying stuff like, well, Green Bull, he was added through the draft. He wasn't in the Marine Ford War and stuff like that. Green Bull's like a fake admiral. Green Bull's not as strong as the other admirals. Green Bull's not really admiral level. I would not be surprised if a lot of arguments started, right? And that's one of the things where I'm just like, if you have when I say I see people shift their opinions, and again, that's fine when you get new information and shift your opinion, but if it's just to fit the narrative that you personally want to push, which is that Sanji is really weak, right? That's different, right? So my take is always this. If you think that, if after Sanji, let's say Sanji beats Green Bull, if after Sanji beats Green Bull, then I see lots of people saying, well, Green Bull isn't actually Admiral level. He was never actually Admiral level. He wasn't at Marine Ford. He was pulled through the draft. He probably isn't as strong as the other Admirals, etc. I'm not going to view those as honest opinions if you weren't saying that before Sanji beat him, right? That's always my take, which is just that you need to get that stuff off. You need to be saying this beforehand. If you truly believe that, then you need to be saying that beforehand, right? Because if the only thing that changes is that Sanji beats him or not, then clearly you're just coming up with reasons after the fact to take away from what happened or to maintain a personal bias, right? That's just always my take, which is if you had this logic or reasoning, why weren't you saying this before, right? That's pretty much it. Unless, of course, during the Sanji fight, Green Bull reveals some reason that, like, some prior information we didn't have that, like, clearly shows he wouldn't be Admiral level, like, maybe Green Bull secretly never learned armament hockey or some shit or something. That would be like, okay, well, we didn't fucking know that. Obviously, he's not Admiral level, right? But if the only piece of information that changes is that Sanji beats him versus before he didn't beat him, then you need to have all your arguments against Green Bull lined up in a row and stated before the fight happens, right? That's all I'm saying. Be consistent. Don't just make shit up after you need to push a previous opinion you had or something, Narrator says, Sanji was Zeph's first mate since being a kid. Sanji is first commander level. Don't know if that's the same. Zora's captain level, not Yonko. They aren't... I don't even know what these mean, though. They aren't far apart like Luffy and Zoro before time skip. I don't want to get into all of the gaps. I put out videos before talking about how I think that Oda plays with the gaps between Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, so I don't think it's a static thing. Because, honestly, like, we could look at it right now. If you went back a couple chapters, you could make the argument that Oda's trying to make Luffy and Zoro look close because he's portraying them as this dynamic duo going up against the Seraphim, faring about evenly with the Seraphim, right? He's just pairing them together while Sanji's off doing his own thing. But now we get a chapter where Sanji looks cool and Luffy and Zoro don't. So, I don't know. I think Oda plays with the gaps. K-Nerb says all the admirals are equal to... I don't know. I don't know about that. Daniel Allen says, do you think we'll actually get to see Garp fight Blackbeard? Why or why not? Outcome. I don't know. I don't think it's that important for me personally to see Garp fight Blackbeard. It would be a little disappointing if we just got cut there and get to see the outcome, which is probably Blackbeard winning. However, I think the only reason we might not see it is because I think that with Garp versus Blackbeard, I think, one, we're already getting to see lots of other random fights that we normally wouldn't expect to get to see, right? So, for example, we got to see Blackbeard versus Boa Hancock, Blackbeard versus Law, Blackbeard versus Mihawk Seraphim, right? Like, just skirmishes and little bits and pieces of it, but we're getting to see stuff out of the blue. And Garp versus Blackbeard is just something that I think nobody was ever expecting, period. And it's just not a fight that people really wanted to get to see, right? So because it's something that's just never, I don't even feel like we're owed it. I feel like it's a treat if we, owed, like, what does Oda really owe us or whatever. But what I mean more is, like, it's just, we didn't even have it on our fucking radar to think about it before this, right? So if we get to see the after... My assumption is that if Oda wants to do it more so for the plot reasons and everything like that, then the fight itself is probably not that important. I would also add one of the reasons is simply because I might be alone on this, but Garp has probably the most basic fighting style out of any One Piece top tier ever, right? I think you guys would agree. Because it is literally just him using his fists, right? Mihawk's a swordsman, but we at least get to see swordsman shit, right? Shanks is, also a swordsman, right? But we at least get to see probably some, again, cool swords techniques. And because Shanks is probably really good at hockey, we might even get to see some hockey stuff that we wouldn't get to see from any other character, right? So maybe some use of advanced Conquerors hockey that nobody else can do. Garp is just a fist fighter. He's not even Luffy's a fist fighter, but he's creativity to his stuff, right? Garp is just a fist fighter. I don't personally really need to see him fight Blackbeard. It would be cool if he did, but let's say hypothetically instead we cut to a defeated Garp, maybe a little disappointing, but that segues into the God Valley incident, right? Now that's way more interesting. I'm fine with fast forwarding a little bit through Garp and Blackbeard's confrontation if we're getting to segue into something that's way, way, way cooler that we've wanted to see a lot longer. So, I don't know. I feel like if it's more so for the plot development purpose and segueing into something versus the actual getting to see a cool fight, I'm okay with that. Again, nice treat if we do get to see it. Cigarverk says, do you think eating 2 fruits and dying is made up? We haven't seen or made aware of someone trying this and dying. We're just told by CP9 greed of 2 is bad. The thing is that I don't think it's made up because we have yet to see any of the Blackbeard pirates eat more than 1 fruit. I think it's a weird... I think it's a very weak excuse if, like a very, very weak excuse if that's the reason we've never seen a character with multiple devil fruits up before Blackbeard. If it's just like, well, Blackbeard's not really, like, there's nothing special or a different sort of threat about him, right? Because it's implied by Marco that it's something unique to his body that can allow him to turn into a sort of unstoppable multi-fruit monster that nobody else can do. So Marco implies it's something to do with his body, right? So that makes Blackbeard stand out as special in that regard. If it turned out to be just like, well, literally everybody can do it, they just don't know about it, I think that'd be a little weird and lame. It's not the same as this, but hear me out. It'd be kind of like everyone can use Conquerors hockey, they just don't know that they can't. Or like everyone can use advanced Conquerors hockey, they just don't know, or some shit like that. I guess that's not the same thing, but it's kind of like gatekeeping a really powerful ability by having it just be like, it's just anybody, literally anybody can do it. Anybody with a fruit could become really OP, but they just think they can't or they're not allowed to. I feel like that's a kind of weak reason. And then the bigger thing is that also not everyone knows the rule about not eating 2 devil fruits, right? So there's so many characters that likely never heard this information. Nobody on the Straw Hat crew knows that, right? It sounded like specific information that Jaiburo is sharing with Kaku that I don't think Kaku knew about before that, right? So even if it's a myth, I doubt it's a myth that everybody knows. So at some point, you got to have some devil fruit users on some obscure islands, right? That probably eat multiple devil fruits, right? It's never established that this is something that's really known. That it's known that you can't eat two devil fruits, I think, but the myth, right, or the idea that eating two fruits will kill you, that's never suggested to be common knowledge, right? So there's got to be lots of characters on random islands and stuff. Like imagine a young Whitebeard on his island, or imagine Ace when he first ate his fire fruit or something like that. These characters probably have no idea for the longest time, so they probably, like, if they get an opportunity, like you're telling me just through random chance, nobody just ate two devil fruits. And then the final reason I would add is that no one on the Blackbeard Pirates has multiple fruits, as far as we know, right? No one on the Blackbeard Pirates has multiple fruits yet, as far as we know, which means that it's likely something that only Blackbeard can do. Because if he could make his entire crew multi-fruit devil fruit users, then why wouldn't he? He'd just be like, hey, Shiryu, you're my right-hand man. Eat this and eat that other one. It's not going to kill you. You'll be fine, right? And all of the Blackbeard Pirates know that Blackbeard was able to eat multiple fruits. So it's not like he's able to keep this a secret or anything. You get what I'm saying? C-Day says, we can see Green Bull go to attack Weevil. Seraphims went to attack Boa Hancock. Oh, I forgot. Green Bull took out Weevil. I was like, trying to remember. I literally forgot that. Seraphims went to attack Boa Hancock. Which Shichibukai Fujitora went to attack, and what happened to him? I mean, we've run out of options at this point, right? So I don't think we'll ever learn. Maybe it was Mihawk, but for Fujitora and Mihawk to have been off-screen would be wildly disappointing. Cigar says, I don't know how one can read One Piece, hate Luffy, Zoro, or Sanji. I mean, dude, there's reasons that you could rightfully hate Sanji because he does do certain things that just go beyond the point of... they're just sexual harassment, right, past a certain point, right? I could see reasons for hating or disliking each one of the characters, right? So I think especially with a lot of Sanji stuff, it's how much of it can you just take in stride as being, this is a gag from a different culture. Let's keep that in mind also. And it's not that serious, right? It's played up as a gag. It's kind of this, I take Sanji stuff like this in the same way that I don't view Garp as a child abuser, right? Garp can beat the shit out of Luffy, as a child beat the shit out of Luffy, as a child throw Luffy into a forest and stuff like that. I don't view Garp as like this child abuser, right? But I understand why, so like if you apply real world logic, then yeah, Sanji's sexual harassment, all of that stuff, yada yada yada. But it's a cartoon series ultimately, and it's playing by cartoon logic where just the way characters react and the way that they're affected by certain things is played more for gags. So you gotta accept that. But at the end of the day, I can see how someone would hate every character, right? Flame Emperor, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months. I will never get tired of Luffy calling Zoro an idiot. Yeah, that's always one of my favorites because it's just like, whenever Luffy gets off calling anybody, whenever Luffy calls anybody stupid, it's just great because where do you get off doing this, dude? Uchek says, are Mihawk and Crocodile technically Yonko commanders? If so, does this group even make sense anymore, power scaling wise? No, so with power scaling, I think, here's my take on power scaling, which is just that I don't like when people try and say things like we all know what we're talking about when we're saying Yonko commander level, right? We're talking about a standard situation, right? So we can all see that most Yonko crews have a similar-ish trio of, at the top of Katakuri, Smoothie, Cracker, King, Queen, Jack, Marco, Jozu, Vista. We can all see the similarities, right? So we all know they all have first mates and everything like that, right? So just because an exception comes along, right? Like many would argue that Zoro is above other Yonko commanders, Yonko first mates. Many would argue that, I think. Whether that's definite or not, I think remains to be seen. And we saw in this chat alone that some would argue that Sanji is also above other Yonko 1 commanders and stuff like that. So Sanji's as strong as or stronger than first mate. So it's like, wait, does this throw the scaling out the window and stuff? It's like, no, when we're talking about scaling, usually we're just saying generalized standards that we see. And we're kind of generally creating a tier based off of that, right? That doesn't mean that everyone who carries that title is that same tier. Because it's like, well, Buggy's a Yonko. Does that mean Buggy's Yonko tier? It's like, no, when we're talking about Yonko tier, we're talking about we notice that there's a caliber of pirate Whitebeard, Shanks, Kaido, Big Mom, that all seem to be roughly the same level. We're calling that a tier, and that tier is being dubbed the Yonko tier because it just seems like that's where there's a certain amalgamation of characters that seem to fall in that range, and they all happen to be Yonko. We're going to call it that, right? That doesn't mean that everyone who gets that title automatically means that. There's just a difference, right? It's what we as the reader are kind of mentally shifting things into levels, sifting things into levels as, and using certain titles from the story as a broad signifiers, right? But we know that not everyone who carries X title means that level of strength, right? Kelvin says, favorite JoJo part before 7 and 8? For me, it's part 4. And I know a lot of people say part 4 is not as good in the anime. I've only watched part 4. I've never read it. I've read parts of it in the manga, but I've only watched it as all the way through as my first experience. I like part 4 a lot just because it's, it feels... I think it was the part where I got to just sink into and enjoy a setting and just zany situations and character dynamics more in a sort of relaxed way. And just some of the fights they're not even fights and they don't try to be fights, like the restaurant scene, right? Things like that. Or meeting the manga artist, right? There are lots of just exploring strange situations that have stands at the heart of them. Sometimes they're fights, sometimes it's just odd scenarios and, strange happenings and things that they get to the bottom of with interesting, quirky little twists. It feels like a very cozy setting, right? Going back to Morj Town, exploring its intricacies and everything like that. I think I also even enjoyed the fact that the villain wasn't that strong in this. I think it felt almost a more fun part when the villain didn't have some world-ending ability. Like, Dio was like, I'm going to conquer the world with this ability. Or Pucci fucked up the entire universe with his ability and stuff, right? Or Cars was on his way to conquer humanity. I felt it was almost more fun because it felt like the stakes were lower in a way, but I got to enjoy Jotaro just being a badass that the villain just had to, like, every villain in the arc just had to run away from the entire time, and it allowed Josuke to have moments to shine, even though he's a lot weaker, but he's a better match for the villains, right? Fighting wise, it makes for a more fun matchup because he's weaker than Jotaro. It just felt lower stakes in many ways, but I was able to enjoy the lower level conflicts and how you got to see weaker characters shine in that sort of situation. Because you can go back even to the final fight against Kira, and it's really cool because every character gets to utilize their ability in a certain way. Almost every character, right? Josuke, obviously, Okuyasu, then Koichi, then Jotaro. I think it's just a cool storyline. Anyway, Rei Uchiha says, cut to Garp defeated. Black says, that's for killing my dad. Blackbeard says, that's for killing my dad. God Valley flashback. Yeah, I think that would be perfectly fine with me. I don't need to see the fight because we're cutting to the more interesting fight. Narrator says, Shanks making a hockey arm. I have a theory for why 2 devil fruits make you explode without a trace. What's the theory? Gamal, I'm going to call the stream in a few minutes, probably at 10:30 EST. Gamal Al-Kaifi says, the raid failing was one of Wano's greatest arguments thanks to you. I was against it, but enjoyed it a lot. What blew my mind was your early right remarks about Elbaf and Yamato. Well done, brother. Thank you very, very, very much. I appreciate that quite a bit. Thanks, man. Always nice to hear. Thank you, Gamal. Sean Easton says, since Green Bull beat Weevil, captured him, and he DH'd Shinobu when she recovered, will Weevil look like the OG Whitebeard when we see him next? I don't think Weevil's that old, though, is the thing. I don't think Weevil's being portrayed as old. He's just ugly. I think that's different. Christian Barraza says, I think Oda doesn't mind killing the satellites because they can probably be rebuilt. I expect to see Ashaka or Pythagoras because they can be rebuilt. I expect to see a Shaka or Pythagoras MK Mark II. I want to see a Frankie shoot a mouth laser or Oda actually use him. Yeah, I don't even believe how permanent the deaths are for these characters. Frankie shooting a mouth laser would be cool, but also it was referenced in Wano that Frankie could pick up a rapid firing laser like Queen has, and I expect that kind of as an update on his abilities soon, because lasers are broke in One Piece. I think in One Piece, tell me if I'm wrong or not, I might be crazy, but in no anime feats, only in the manga, I think in One Piece, I have never seen a laser attack I think Marco is the only character I've seen in all of One Piece that has stopped a laser attack, and that was from Kizaru. I think besides that, I think I've literally never seen. And Marco's got the Phoenix ability, so he's got regeneration, right? I think I've never seen Zoro cut a laser. I've never seen Luffy stop it with haki. I've only ever seen characters, I think, dodge lasers. And it doesn't matter how strong the characters are. Like, you can look at Monster Trio characters and stuff like that. I think I've only ever seen characters dodge lasers. Marco's the only character I can think of that tanked a laser, and that's because that's his ability. Am I crazy? You had, like, Rayleigh run in, and he stopped Kizaru's kick, so he kicked Kizaru's foot away, so the laser missed him. But I just don't think I've seen a character ever just straight up stop a laser with haki or a sword or a fist or something like that. And obviously it's something that characters probably should be able to do with haki, but yeah, lasers as far as I've seen just seem kind of broke. You know, I would like to see that interaction at some point. Like, let me see with my eyes that characters can stop lasers with stuff. You know. The Rayleigh scene was, as I remember it, right? It was. Let me pull up the thing. If you look at chapter, I feel like it's 500, 510, 511. No. Yeah. Rayleigh doesn't stop the laser. He kicks Kizaru's foot away, so it makes the laser miss, but Rayleigh doesn't stop the laser. I don't want to show panels because this is a chapter discussion stream, and I've just heard scary stories about that, but you guys can check it out. It's chapter 511, the final page. Non-seriously says, can't wait to see the Straw Hats versus Shanks' crew. It feels like the red-haired pirates are more seasoned Straw Hat pirates. I kind of agree. But the Straw Hat pirates, I feel like, have a more zany, versatile spectrum of abilities, which makes them more interesting, you know? How will they win? Do you think it could be a Davy Back fight? I do think it's a Davy Back fight. And I've mentioned before, I think we get to see Usopp versus Yasop, which is why I think a Davy Back fight is very possible, because a Davy Back fight would be one of the only scenarios where Oda could give a setup where Usopp could beat his dad. Because we know his dad is probably a much stronger character, much stronger fighter, but depending what the challenge is, Usopp could find a way just through ingenuity to beat his dad. So something like marksmanship related, but not a straight up who's stronger contest, right? JK Kane, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months. Do you think all major characters from all the arcs in One Piece will show up for the final war arc? I don't know about all major characters. Hey, Powervision, what's going on? DTMIFJU says, does Laser Sword not count? I'm just talking... I just want to see a simple thing, which is just not in the anime. I don't think it's that much to ask for. I don't know. Like, does Laser Sword count? A laser sword, I don't know. I'm saying just, we see lasers all the time. Kizaru shoots lasers, pacifistas shoot lasers, Frankie shoots lasers, Queens shot lasers. Show me someone just stopping a laser, right? Does a laser sword count? I don't know. Let me just see the OG version be stopped, right? I don't really know how we equate the light sword. It's a light sword, is it a laser? I don't know how we define that, right? Like, just this, I want to see that. That's all I want to see. I don't think it's not doable, you know? Shouldn't characters just be able to do it? Why am I having to see, even nowadays, the Monster Trio having to dodge lasers, right? Like, I see Sanji having to dodge Queen's lasers. I see Zoro and Luffy having to dodge the Seraphim's lasers and stuff like that. Can they not stop this shit? I'm Famous says Sanji would beat Marco based on matchup. Dude, Marco's a huge damage tank. I mean, as much as we talk up the Lunarians, Marco is a huge damage tank. Right? He's a huge damage tank. He's just as much of a damage tank probably as Lunarians. Yeah, I mean, Marco's a ridiculous damage tank, right? Like, look at Marco's list of characters. The list of characters that basically seem like... You have fucking Big Mom saying that basically implying that she can't really hurt Marco right now. She doesn't have enough souls, whatever the fuck that means. She was able to grab him, but if you have even Big Mom and Yonko basically being like, it's not like she would lose to Marco, but she's like, this is too much trouble. This is a pain in the ass to actually put this guy down. That's a huge deal. You know, I don't think Marco can be underestimated. Like every admiral. I guess Aokiji never attacked him, but you know, he's taken Kizaru's best attacks. He's taken a punch from, like, he's stopped he's tanked Akainu's attacks. He's taken Kizaru's attacks. He's stopped Kaido's attack, the Boro Breath, right? Even Big Mom is just straight up saying that I don't want to deal with this right now because there's not an easy way to put this guy down. I am always very skeptical of, you know, like, I think Sanji, there's an argument out there that Sanji's stronger than Marco. I don't know about it, but I don't know if that's a good matchup for Sanji, honestly, because I just don't think Sanji would have the power to do it necessarily. I don't think he's shown it. I don't know. You could say that Marco doesn't have the power to put down Sanji either, so I see the argument there, but I wouldn't go so far as to say, and I think that that's definitely possibly true, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that, well, it goes the other way around, that Sanji can definitely damage Marco, right? Daniel Allen says, have you seen Everything Everywhere All at Once? Dude, people have been messaging me nonstop that I should go see that movie. That it was happening when the movie first came out, and it feels like deja vu. It's happening all over again. Everyone's saying go watch Everywhere All at Once. I want to see it. I do want to see it. I will watch it soon. Because people that I'm friends with and family, they know I like movies quite a bit, so they're like, how have you not seen this one? So I'm like, sorry, I'll get around to it. It looks really cool, and I really like the concept. And it's one of those movies that even the trailer really sold me, because even the trailer showed a cool scene. It showed her taking one of those fake little eye things or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like arts and crafts type things, and putting it on her forehead. I thought that that's like a creative little idea, even just to showcase in a trailer. And it felt cool even just seeing it in a trailer. Okay. I think I'm almost caught up. I don't think I'm missing anything. Jay the Lightseeker says, it would be kind of sick psychologically if Stella killed York. He's kind of killing himself, but at this point he should. York was an angel. York was an angel? Celestial Dragon? I don't know. It would be cool if Vegapunk had to kill York. It'd be interesting. Okay, guys. I think I am pretty much going to have to wrap it. Let me make sure I'm not missing any supers. Just checking. I don't see anything I'm missing. All right, this was a fun stream. I feel like I got to talk a lot about a lot of stuff. AJK saying something. Just type it real quick, man, and then I'll probably close stream. You got 10 seconds. Because I'm fucking hungry. DTMHFEU says, Morj, do you think Logias can reinforce the intangible body like Kizaru with lasers? Reinforce their intangible body with like Kizaru with lasers. Does Kizaru reinforce his intangible body with lasers? Isn't it more so just him shooting lasers out of his body? AJK is asking, can you tell us which videos/articles of Watch Mojo you did? I want to see how your progression of analyzing content is and how much just practical work and doing it to improve oneself. I don't remember. I can look up and tell you next time, because I only did a few. I think the first one was action movie related. That's what I remember. It was something like, you know, they've got a lot of qualifiers, but it was something action movie related. I'm not proud of it though, because it's not analysis. You know what I mean? Also, they don't pay well. But it's not analysis. What they tell you to do is literally this. It's literally just, what do you call it? You go through the internet, so they don't want you making your own lists. You're supposed to go through the internet. They give you a sort of spreadsheet template, and then you take other articles, right, that do like their own top 15, top 20 lists and stuff like that, and then you're supposed to paste those into the spreadsheet kind of, and basically what number those movies were, and then you're supposed to have I forget how many, but you're supposed to have a set number of example lists, and then the Watch Mojo people will look at that, and then that way they can kind of tell okay, it seems like people, like, they want to be able to see what other people are saying and how other people rank it, and then they'll create their own sort of cumulative ranking based off of that. So it seems like it's a little bit their opinion, like, by their, it's whoever is reviewing whoever's kind of in charge basically of that video. It's kind of a little bit of their opinion, but mostly it's kind of just like averaging out what the other lists I'm giving them are, right? So it's smart because at the end of the day, they have lists that are often going to be kind of consensus opinions, which is why they're easy to make. There's not a lot of thought in them, and they're never going to be that controversial. If you ever run into a controversial Watch Mojo list, then that just means that whoever was doing the research for it happened to find like a few articles that were missing or had some really wild rankings of their own, because they're not really personal people's opinions, right? So then they will give me, hey, you're supposed to rank it in this order, and then I'm supposed to kind of just rank it based off of that, even if I haven't seen everything on it. And they suggest that I look at what the other lists are saying and go off of that a little bit. So it's kind of dumb, but you know, that's it. All right, guys. I will talk to y'all later. Yeah, Watch Mojo is very AI-esque, I suppose, because it's not personal opinions. Maybe S. Mango's behind the scheme. The real Doflamingo always wanted to become a Celestial Dragon. Thus, the Seraphim would copy this too, and then be the man controlling York. Yeah, it's still an interesting idea, but I don't think I'm perfectly fine if S. Mango's not involved in this arc at all. Somebody else mentioned some similarities between S. Mango and York. It would be cool if Doflamingo's involved at this point, but I'm personally cool with what we got. York's the villain. All right, guys. I will talk to y'all later. King J says, who made this guy mod? Yeah, dude, okay, AJK, we gotta have a quick talk. You can't spam anymore, alright? You've been around for a long time. I always appreciate your comments and stuff like that, but you can't spam anymore. You can't do stuff that other people would get banned for. So, it's just keep that in mind for the future. One Piece and Chill says, before you go, I want to say Yoke is not alone. That's kind of along the same lines, right? Yeah. Yoke. I saw some people saying, like, Yoke, like egghead Yoke stuff on Twitter. Don't know how much to read into that. I guess that's a thing. Maybe not alone. What we do know is that somebody else was taking out the cameras because she was seen with the Strats at the time the cameras were being taken out. I can only assume that was her telling one of the Seraphim to do it. Alright, guys. I'll talk to you all later.